Hello learners, I am Dr. Sunita Dhar, Faculty School of Gender and Development Studies. Today we are going to discuss about the concept motherhood, understanding from multiple perspectives. And I know that you must have also read about motherhood in Unit 6 of the course BGAC 001, that is Gender Sensitization, Society, Culture and Change. And now let's start the lecture, and I hope you will enjoy watching this video. Learning outcomes. After watching this video, you will be able to understand the concept of motherhood from a feminist lens, locate the practice of mothering in social context, critically analyze the idea of motherhood and its manifestations, and contextualize it in relation to Indian situation. Let's take a look of the concept or the construction of motherhood from a historical position, because without understanding the historical position of any category or any concept, it may not be able to help all of you to contextualize in the current situation, wherever wherever we are here and wherever we want to apply the concept. So, if I look at theoretically, within patriarchal norms, the practice of mothering continues to be conceptualized from male dominated perspectives across the world. The objectification of women's bodies in patriarchal cultures lead to make the body conform to certain sociocultural expectations and beauty myths, such as the emphasis on being thin or light skin, which I am sure you must be watching in televisions and other forms of media. Similarly, with regard to maternal bodies, there has been specific implications as per the socio-cultural norms of the society. Therefore, we can state that motherhood as a concept is socially constructed. According to Maria Mies, she writes that the foundation of industrial capitalist patriarchal society is based on the principle of dichotomies between man and nature, man and woman, city and village, metropolis and colony, work and life, nature and culture. She refers to these dichotomies as the process of colonization. Francis Bacon, the founding father of modern scientific method, perceived nature as a witch whose secrets have to be discovered by force. Since violence and force have been described as invisible principles within which the modern science was built, hence subordination of nature and women was naturalized in this whole process of development of mechanical devices and the modern science. Maria Mies writes that, I quote, "The people in America, Asia and Africa were treated like women and nature in Europe as savages," I unquote. Without the wealth extracted from the colonies, neither capitalism nor modern European science would have progressed between 16th and the 19th century. Therefore, you could see that forces or social factors like racism, sexism and other forces have been historically associated with the colonial expansion of Europe and the rise of the modern science. The division between white and non-white, nature and culture, women and men acquired clear expressions or became clearer in the age of enlightenment, particularly in the 18th and 19th century. In the European history, modern relationship with nature was conceptualized in two ways primarily: fear of nature as enemy and love of nature as mother and friend. The modernization process further accentuated the division between nature and culture, within which nature and women are seen as the other, or they were symbolized as the other. The notion of good women emerged in the 18th and 19th century therefore. What is the idea of a good woman? The idea of a good woman and the ideal of womanhood were necessary for sustaining the sexual and the social division of labor. In this historical point, two images of the new woman emerged in relation to the rational man. One is she is weak, therefore she needs protection, and the other is she is a mother, the embodiment of feeling, caring and the humanness. Feminist scholars in the West have noted that maternal bodies are disciplined into conforming with set patterns of behavior and appearance. In the US, for instance, some feminists like Eva Feder-Kitte and Jen Swawacki have emphasized the impact of patriarchal control and power on women's bodies, pregnancy and childbirth. In recent times, the largest past systems, which include capitalism, racism and other forces, also influence the construction of motherhood. These larger forces impact how gender roles, relations and identities get defined at micro level. For instance, the reproductive work performed by mothers, including child care and housework, may benefit both patriarchy and capitalism. This is because women's unpaid housework is not only invisible but helps to sustain male dominance as well as provides economic benefits to one part of the population at the expense of the other. When seen from this perspective, it is not patriarchy alone we can say that is responsible for the oppression of women and mothers. Rather, patriarchy works together with other repressive forces such as capitalism, racism and casteism to control the practice of motherhood in India and across the globe. Let us now look at the feminist conceptualization of motherhood. And it's very important how do feminist scholars have theorized the concept of motherhood. There are several reasons why do feminist scholars debate around mothering, and it has been a problematic area for feminist theorizing. It may be pertinent to begin a discussion on motherhood and the maternal body by considering some of these concerns raised by feminists across the globe. First, the possibility of pregnancy and childbirth create an inherent difference between the bodies of men and women, and I'm sure everybody is aware of it. Feminists have been concerned with the nature of this difference, which has led to inequality. The reproductive capacities have meant that women are often seen as closer to nature than men. And similarly, if you have read about ecofeminism, so this notion has also been, reproduces or represents in the debates of ecofeminism. Hence, the maternal body is located simultaneously in the private and the public spheres. While maternity and motherhood are located in the private sphere, the experiences of motherhood are largely structured through socio-cultural practices and norms. Medicine, market, law and society determine who can have access to contraceptives and abortions, shape the practices of childbirth within a society, as well as define the meaning of the maternal and the child health. Feminist scholars too have debated the question that motherhood is the root of women's oppression, while at other contexts suggesting that the capacity for giving birth is their greatest strength. These are some of the issues which you are going to read in this unit after watching this video. Scholars of all second wave feminists like Simone de Beauvoir and Sula Smith-Firestone argue that women primarily trapped in their reproductive roles, particularly in the book The Dialectic of Sex, which was published in the year 1970. Firestone argued that women would only be free when they were released from the process of reproduction and lactation using technology to reject their biological entrapment. Feminist poet Adrienne Rich makes a distinction between the ideology of motherhood and the experiences of mothering, which as learners of gender studies can describe as the embodied experiences of motherhood or the subjective or the lived experiences of motherhood. Rich distinguishes between motherhood as, I quote, the potential relationship of any woman to her powers of reproduction and to children, and to motherhood as the institution which aims at ensuring that potential remains under the male control, I unquote. This distinction has enabled us to describe the aspect of institutionalization of motherhood within patriarchy. Similarly, Mary O'Brien, a midwife by profession, argued that patriarchy is structured around the participation in reproduction process primarily by women. the way patriarchy has shaped reproduction and motherhood, it became the sources of women's subordination and oppression. Let us now examine these concepts in Indian context. The metaphor of the mother has been significant in India as the symbolization of the country as a mother, and the universal presence of the mother goddesses indicates its further imagination. Feminists in India have stated the paradox between having respect for mothers and the poor status of women in society with regard to practices such as sex selective abortion, female feticide, and infanticide across states and communities. As it has been stated in the course, it is a well known fact that Mother Goddess worship holds an important place in the religious and cultural fabric of our country. Mothers have been worshipped in the form of idolized goddesses such as Sita, Lakshmi, and Durga in many parts of the country. Mother goddesses worship goes back to pre-Vedic times, and evidence of the worship of fertility goddesses has been traced back to the Indus Valley and Harappan civilization. The association of fecundity with the female body and the early dependence of ancient civilizations on agriculture as the chief mode of survival solidified the idolization of fertility mother goddesses over time. We continue to respect our goddesses alongside gods, yet mortal women face so many difficulties and challenges and are placed at a social disadvantage position compared to men. And now you know why it is so. Then which brings back to the discussion on the social construction of motherhood. Because as in the first slide we have indicated that motherhood is socially constructed. So now let us look at it and let's try to understand it. Indic thought represents several conceptual categories including Prakriti, Devi, Ardhanarishwar, which signify the presence of maternal feminine and women's agency in the religious cultural landscape of India. However, the presence of these conceptual categories does not translate into a gender-just society. There has been stereotypical representations of motherhood or the maternal in Indian context. For example, the social construction of the good woman as mother is reflected in the stereotype construction of the infertile women as banj or barren. How patriarchy has shaped the idea of a good mother, particularly by giving birth to sons, is indicative of social stereotypes. The culture of son preference and sex selective abortion are indicative of the maternal realities in India. Due to the patriarchal nature of Indian society, motherhood in Indian context is further determined by other social institutions like caste and class and other forces such as globalization and market. The impact of globalization and economic liberalization has created a complex class hierarchy in contemporary urban India, with each class aspiring towards the ones above it. The coming together of patriarchy and capitalism results in a culture of consumerism, which promotes a greater objectification of women's bodies. This may have specific consequences for the maternal body. For instance, the maternal body tends to be valued for what it offers to the patriarchal culture, the promise of offspring, especially male, who will continue to ensure the sustenance of patrilineal society. Maternal body is thus reduced to its reproductive function and identified primarily with the idea of the womb as vessel or container. While the reproductive function is overvalued in this process, the maternal body is objectified because of capitalism and patriarchy. These influences have significant effects on different classes and caste and for women across the urban-rural divide. For instance, in the urban middle classes, women in their roles as mothers are expected to be upholders of traditional family values and impart the same to their children, even when some of these values may reinforce patriarchal perceptions towards girls and women. These may include the subordination of wives and daughters to the husband, In the case of rural women, motherhood often comes at the cost of extreme danger to the lives of both mothers and their offspring. Poverty and lack of access to adequate healthcare facilities result in unwanted pregnancies and high mortality rates for mothers and infants. According to 2011 census data, sex ratio in India is 943 per 1000 males. Additionally, taking care of young children is often a responsibility which is undertaken in competition with the urgent need to perform labor in fields, household or factories or homes. Rural women continue to face multiple challenges and struggle for basic necessities in terms of nutrition, health care and education for themselves and for their children. Due to lack of educational and economic resources, they may lack access to safe reproductive health services also and contraceptive measures and consequently suffer from unwanted pregnancy at a risk to their health or be unable to take decisions regarding the number of children. Often their decisions with regard to pregnancy and childbirth is embedded within the family and community. Let us take an example and contextualize it. Many rural women working in the agricultural sector perform labor both outside and inside the home, which as scholars of or learners of gender studies, you can refer to this as double burden or triple burden for women. However, much of this work goes unrecognized due to gender biases. According to 2011 census, working hours of rural women, both private and public sphere, home and agriculture sector is 25.6. However, with men it is 51.7. So you can see that how women's work are invisible in both productive and reproductive spheres. Rural migrant women in particular face extreme conditions in fulfilling further maternal responsibilities. You may have noticed such women working at construction sites, often with babies and very young children left to take care of their own safety in dangerous conditions nearby. The option of providing safety, nutritional security and health care and educational facilities to their children is something not available to many poor women both in urban and rural settings. Many migrant rural women are employed by middle class and upper class urban households as domestic helps. Even when child care and mothering work is performed by them, caste and class divides are almost always upheld or maintained. In terms of raising their own children, many rural and poor women are restricted by severe economic considerations. We can therefore argue that mothering continues to remain embedded within the complexities of caste, class, ethnicity, religion and generated operations which define the lived experiences of mothering for these women. And with this, I would like to conclude my lecture and I hope you must have enjoyed the lecture and you can always go back to the unit 6 from BGAC 001 to be able to further understand the concept of mothering. Thank you.